Here's a question that most people have never thought about. Before DNA tests, before marriage certificates, before written law, how did any man know his children were actually his? The answer for almost all of human history is simple. He didn't. Not with certainty. Not once. Not ever. For roughly 2 million years. And many researchers argue that this single biological reality shaped human behavior in ways most of us still haven't fully processed. Anthropologists call it paternity uncertainty, and it is one of the most studied concepts in evolutionary biology. Maternity has always been certain. A mother knows. She was there. But paternity, for almost all of human history, was a question with no answer. And the social systems, emotional responses, and relationship structures that grew around that gap are still influencing how many people behave today. Go back 50,000 years. You're in a camp of around 30 people. Everyone eats together. Everyone sleeps close. Everyone knows everyone. Anthropological evidence suggests early human groups were smaller and more communal than most people imagine, with far less of the privacy we take for granted today. And a child is born. You look at that child, something pulls in your chest, and your brain, running on instincts shaped over hundreds of thousands of years, is already asking a question you cannot stop. Is this mine? In that world, without any way to verify, the honest answer was maybe. Just maybe for your entire life. Many evolutionary psychologists argue that this uncertainty, this permanent maybe, was one of the most powerful pressures shaping human social behavior. So, what did human groups actually do with it? One response documented in certain societies was communal investment. Some groups raised children collectively, multiple adults, men included, investing in children across the group. The logic from an evolutionary standpoint makes sense. If some of those children were probably yours, investing in all of them is a reasonable strategy. This pattern still exists. Researchers studying certain Amazonian communities have documented a practice called partible paternity, the cultural belief that a child can have more than one biological father, multiple men sharing responsibility for one child, all of them present, all of them invested. And studies suggest children in these communities can show higher survival rates, though researchers continue to debate exactly why. More adults providing resources and protection likely plays a role. Biology in cases like this appears to favor outcomes over romantic ideals. But there was another response, and it is the one that many evolutionary psychologists believe shaped most of the world we live in, when paternity uncertainty felt threatening. Many researchers argue the male brain developed what we now recognize as mate-guarding behavior, jealousy, vigilance, heightened attention to a partner's movements and relationships. Not character flaws, at least not according to one influential line of evolutionary thinking. The hypothesis is that, from a purely genetic standpoint, investing years of resources into a child who does not share your genes represents a significant reproductive cost, and the brain, shaped by millions of years of selection, may have developed responses to reduce that risk. It is worth being clear, this is an evolutionary hypothesis. It describes a possible origin. It does not justify controlling behavior. Those are very different things. Researchers have found that suspected infidelity has been a recurring factor in many cases of intimate partner conflict across different societies. But culture, individual values, and personal choices shape behavior just as powerfully as evolutionary pressures, if not more so. The biology may set a tendency. It does not determine an outcome. Now here is where it gets into territory that most people find genuinely surprising. The human body itself appears to have evolved certain responses to reproductive competition. Researchers studying human reproductive biology have found that sperm production and quality can vary depending on social context. Some studies suggest that men who have been separated from partners may show changes in sperm characteristics upon reunion, though researchers note this area remains actively studied and debated. What is clear is that human reproductive biology is more complex and context-sensitive than most people assume. The body appears to respond to social environments in ways that go beyond conscious control. It's a reminder that evolution shaped not just behavior, but biology, often in ways we are still uncovering. Now, evolutionary psychologists have also proposed hypotheses about how attraction itself may have been shaped by these pressures. Some researchers have suggested that mate preferences in humans may shift in measurable ways across a hormonal cycle. The evidence here is genuinely mixed. Some studies support the idea, others have failed to replicate the findings. It remains one of the more actively debated areas in evolutionary psychology. What is broadly agreed on is that human attraction is complex. influenced by biology, culture, individual experience, and context simultaneously. No single theory captures all of it. Now, back to the original question. How did ancient humans actually manage paternity uncertainty in practice? One strategy documented across many cultures is the use of resemblance. Studies have found that men tend to invest more in children who they perceive to resemble them. And interestingly, research suggests that newborns are often described as resembling the father, even when the resemblance is minimal across a wide range of cultures. Researchers believe this may function as a way of encouraging paternal investment by reducing uncertainty, even if the resemblance itself is partly imagined. Whether that is a deliberate social behavior or an unconscious one, the effect on investment and care appears to be real. A second strategy is far more familiar and far more consequential in human history. Many ancient societies developed systems of controlling female movement, social access, and reproductive behavior, veiling, seclusion, chaperone, restrictions on who women could speak to, travel with, or be seen near. Historians and anthropologists have traced many of these practices back, at least in part, to concerns about lineage and inheritance, which were themselves tied to paternity certainty. It is important to say clearly, these systems caused enormous harm. The evolutionary pressure that may have contributed to their origin does not make them acceptable or justified. Understanding where a behavior came from is not the same as defending it, but the historical pattern is striking. Many of the most rigid social control systems in human history were constructed around managing the same biological uncertainty. Is this child mine? Marriages, inheritance law, property rights, family structures, religious doctrine around female purity. Many, though certainly not all, of these institutions were shaped, at least partly, by the need to manage paternity uncertainty at a social level. And then, in 1984, a scientist named Alec Jeffreys developed DNA fingerprinting. Within a few years, paternity testing became possible. Within a few decades, it became routine, which means the uncertainty that shaped so much of human social behavior for so long can now be resolved with a simple, inexpensive test in about 24 hours. The question that had no answer for 2 million years now has a clear one. But here is the part that researchers find genuinely fascinating. The emotional systems that many evolutionary psychologists believe developed in response to that uncertainty did not simply switch off when the answer became available. Jealousy did not disappear when DNA tests arrived. The need for reassurance, for certainty, for proof of loyalty, none of it went away. This is not surprising from an evolutionary standpoint. Emotional systems shaped over hundreds of thousands of years do not update on the timescale of a few decades. The answer became available in 1984. The emotional weight those systems carry has not changed at the same pace. For many people, the feelings remain, even when the factual uncertainty no longer exists. Researchers describe this as a mismatch, when emotional systems are running in an environment very different from the ones that shaped them. The system was built for a specific problem, the problem changed, the system kept running. And that gap between what the emotional system was designed for and what it is responding to now is something many people experience without understanding where it comes from. Jealousy that seems disproportionate, anxiety about loyalty that feels impossible to reason away, the need for certainty that no amount of reassurance quite satisfies. Many people carry these responses without knowing that they may have roots stretching back further than recorded history. That does not make the feelings less real or less difficult, but understanding the possible origin of an emotional response is often the first step towards managing it more clearly. You are not simply weak or irrational if you feel these things. You may be running emotional software that is genuinely ancient and genuinely mismatched to the world you actually live in. Culture, therapy, self-awareness, and conscious choice all have the power to shape how you respond to these impulses, and the evidence suggests strongly that they work. Biology is not destiny. It is a starting point, and knowing where you started is genuinely useful when you're trying to figure out where you want to go. The institutions built around paternity uncertainty, many of them harmful, some of them still with us, were not inevitable outcomes of biology. They were choices made by people operating under specific pressures in specific times with the tools and beliefs available to them. Different societies made different choices, and humans continue to make different choices today. The underlying biology may be shared. What we build on top of it is not fixed. For nearly 2 million years, the question had no answer. Now it does. And what we do with that in our relationships, in our institutions, in our understanding of ourselves is still being written. That is what makes this one of the more interesting questions in all of human biology. Not just what shaped us, but what we choose to do now that we know. Subscribe and like. Your ancestors spent 2 million years unable to answer this question. You now have it in 24 hours. The least you can do is hit the button. The biology shaped the question, the science finally answered it. What comes next is up to you.
I hope you enjoyed our journey. Remember to subscribe.